Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for Mayor of Abbotsford. I made it clear that the first thing we're going to do is bring the RCMP into Abbotsford on the organized criminal ring that laid in the Abbotsford Private Police Department. I showed you many videos of what the Abbotsford Police were using sympathy, their uniform, and threats on my community, and bullying to control and stay in power for an elite organization, an establishment to lift job sites over the general community. Henry Brown was running roughshod and he needed the Abbotsford Police to do it. Through the Abbotsford newspaper, Vicky Hopes was blocking and holding down stories of the abuse that was taking place for Henry Braun, and so was Ken in the Abbotsford newspaper. When Henry Braun's son, Darren Braun, started showing me, I went to the best men and women. Today, I want to make clear something to all Canadians and to all Abbotsford residents. I'm a voice with Abbotsford community on the seniors and homeowners that had their houses and them families, thanks to the Mission RCMP's confidence in me, restoring that you can do this, and restoring that all Canadians have to have a look at this, and we need law, and we need law and order. And what was taking place with Henry's son, it was so obvious to the RCMP and decisions of council in his house called Abbotsford First. Ross Siemens is a slate called Abbotsford First, and the decision, everything over. Henry knew he couldn't own me, he couldn't own Manji Soe, and he couldn't own Troy Gasper. He knew I was the strongest, and by all means you could see everything I showed you, even Greg Toe's blocking and trying to bribe me. I want to make it clear to the RCMP's help, I stood strong. I wouldn't buckle to Greg Toe's offer. I didn't buckle to the abuse, the block by Vicky Hopes and everything. I'm here for the full weight of the law, and that means even after Vicky Hopes, I want to make sure that this picture is painted. It's painted really good of how Henry was using the Abbotsford newspaper. Today I'm on Gladys Avenue. This is where the Tree of Hope was for the homeless. The Abbotsford City Mayor, Henry Ross Siemens, came in here and cut it down at midnight with the Abbotsford City. It was supposed to be pressuring the homeless out of here. Then he used taxpayers' dollars with the Abbotsford First, agreeing with him to haul all these rocks in. It wasn't. It was to pressure the homeless out of Abbotsford here, down off of Rob Funk of the Versus site right down here on Sage. So sales and everything wouldn't go. They were changing the zoning. It was to get the homeless out of here and everything else. That I made clear. What am I doing on Gladys? Today I want to talk to you about a very special Abbotsford resident. A legend of a legend of a legend. Next in line, I believe, he would be with George Ferguson. If I became the mayor, he would be the first man to have a statue built in Abbotsford in his legacy. That is Councillor Mogil. Mogil, the South Asian, donated his time and his heart to every Abbotsford resident. No matter what your problem was, Mogil, you could pick up the phone and he was there. When he saw that Henry Brown was manipulating the city, having decisions upstairs and behind everybody's back, and councillors of Abbotsford First and Dave Loans were giving him help, and it wasn't going before the auditorium because that was being live streamed and the general public then could see, and the stuff he could block with Vicky Hopes. Mogil called him out. Under the non-disclosures Mogil signed, he couldn't tell the backroom deals Henry was doing, so Henry tried to pressure him with Abbotsford News. What does Mo know? What does Mo know? So Mo would open, and then Henry could sue him because they signed non-disclosures. The way Mo can tell is under court, and he has to testify of what took place. He knew it was wrong for Henry's son to be a proving officer when Henry stood off and said, I'm in conflict, I own this with Erwin Braun, and his son was running the projects. He knew it was wrong when Henry stood off and figured he could fool the whole of Abbotsford, and he knew Ed and Mike would cover him, the MP and MLA, and I'll have Darren Braun in front of Ross Siemens. Mogil came down here during the election to bust the homeless to the voting poll. Henry Brown told Mike Sir, who was the police chief at the time, he couldn't have that shitbox having any more voters taken to the poll. He was worried that Mogil could rally the troops and he could win. So Henry took extra precaution. Let me tell you what he did. He asked the Abbotsford Police, the APD task force in their black vehicles, through Mike Sir to come and shit-kick Mogil's campaign team. Darren Brown told me I told the Mission RCMP and they said, this is far-fetched. How did you learn that? When I told them it was from Henry Braun's son, they said, wouldn't it be a coincidence that gets video filmed? So let me explain what happened. Abbotsford's Mogale's campaign was here. The Abbotsford Police came down. They smashed the campaign man's phone. They pulled up in all kinds of officers and they were impeding the election for Henry Braun to win. They told him they were going to jail him and everything else. It's knowing when you're going through the elections, you can push the boundaries, but you can't cheat, you can't bribe. You can't give $10,000 like Marcus Dalvis did to Dave Sidhu and said, buy me the Liberal nomination. That you can't do. That there you got to be banned and be charged. And Marcus Dalvis admitted that he did that for Dave Sidhu. That's quantum projects. Mogale, in return to get a few votes, he was going to feed the homeless and bust them. The RCMP said, well, what a shame. In time Mogale gets these people on a bus, gets them to the voting poll and gets 3 votes, he could have got 700 or 800 more votes by knocking on doors. I would agree. But more Mogale's value was about all the people, especially the vulnerable people. But Henry used the Abbotsford Police. They smashed his phone, they threatened his campaign, and they were doing everything. Mike Sir was the police chief. Instead of investigating, he covered it for Henry. So Henry could win for the official community plan that Henry could put in effect for all his friends and everybody to buy. It was an elite ring Darren Brown showed me. How Dave Loans played, he was Henry's lackey. How they needed to load Ross because they couldn't bribe me. They were running roughshod on Abbotsford for multi-billion dollars of land, lifts to the government, these housing jobs, and what you saw, I showed you what Archway was doing, and all this money. You saw Henry's desperate moves trying to get Mike de Jong in. It was his last ditch effort to own Abbotsford. But the Abbotsford APD were his muscle, were his strength, and they were running roughshod on the community. When I learned all this from Henry Braun's son, I went to the best man there was. I set up former premiers, I set up dignitaries in the community that would carry weight and eyewitnesses. And I said to the RCMP, the Abbotsford Police, if they did this to Councillor Mogale, and they shit-kicked him the way they did for Henry Braun, when I run as mayor, Henry's going to do the same. The RCMP mission encouraged me to put my name forward so they could see the blocks by Vicky Hopes. They could see Dave Sidhu. They could see Greg Toes. They could see it all on the world stage, how it was playing out. And Big Papa Bear was going to own Abbotsford for these millions of dollars of lifts. When Henry snuck in on Cooper's farm, they knew right now Henry Braun should have went after the city lawyer and Peter Sparanese for changing them dockets. It didn't. When I ran as mayor, Henry Braun did worse. He knew he couldn't buy me. He knew he couldn't jack me, and he knew I was not scared of the Abbotsford Police, but he did not know what embraved me. What embraved me was the great man of Mission RCMP, knowing that to have everything set up on my campaign, professional people and everything, and watch the Abbotsford Police pull it all off. Watch them use your uniforms and beg we're out about gangs and everything else. To Chief Watts, Mike Sir fled because he couldn't hold it no more. Mike Sir fled when he knew that Henry knew he couldn't buy me. He got in his car, left the city of Abbotsford, and tried to come in a hit and run and end my life. He fled, he used the Abbotsford the top. These are corporals, investigators, the Safety Standards Act to do it. Henry knew it wasn't going away. He just didn't know where I was getting the strength and information from, and that was from the RCMP. Then Henry used the men and women in black vehicles to ring my house. He used them on my job site. He used them to get me for impeding, drinking and driving, endangerment driving. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the anguish that this South Asian went through was pure greed by Henry Braun and the white-collar crime in the Abbotsford Police Department. We got to gut that out. There's a lot of officers got to be cut loose because they had a sworn duty to investigate it and they failed. When they started seeing me making YouTube videos and what I was doing for Abbotsford, because I know the law must take its course, they were worried about the RCMP, RCSIS taking it over, so then they started upping the threats. And they started bullying, but they'll never be questioned. They're an important and they're a vital thing. These jobs that Henry went in, He lobbied his friends and his partners, and he was jacking everybody else. He had city councillors called Abbotsford First winning them decisions. But he started threatening people. The Abbotsford Police were not here about law. When Mike Surr saw he couldn't control it anymore, he called quits and he fled to Surrey. Then they brought Watts in and figured if we changed the police force, this would change. You're talking elite investigators, like Keelan Olenoff when he said, I went to Henry's house because there was break-ins. And his own staff sergeant said, there's never been a break-in at Henry's house. He's the mayor, it'd be all over the newspaper. There's never been a 911. And Olenoff's lying. And why did Olenoff say he went there? Because Henry had millions of dollars in his safes. Then Olenoff's threat on me to drop videos in lawsuit or he would personally bury me. That calls for the Police Complaints Commission in Abbotsford to investigate and talk to witnesses. The night at my house, they wouldn't do it. You saw the Abbotsford Police. We're important. Nobody can come after us because of the uniform. The question is this, if Henry paid him, how many other people have paid him and we haven't solved the crimes? How many Abbotsford Police are being stalked and can't leave their position because they jacked somebody and threatened? In my opinion, I believe quite a few. Too many, far too many. We need a change. We need a change the day it started on Councillor Mogel. Why do I defend Councillor Mogel? When Barty Sandhu, a South Asian woman, stood up when I was running as mayor, and Sandy Blue said I grabbed her Abbotsford First. She's a part of Abbotsford First with Kelly Shahal and Mark Workentine, and sat at the sports center to try to block me so Ross could win, their teammate. I grabbed her in the whipper whapper. Was Barty Sandhu called that out. The Abbotsford Police failed to charge. But Sandy Blue now gets appointed to the Police Foundation with guess who? Erwin Braun. Henry was running roughshod. You saw him. When he was no longer the mayor, it was about the money and the jobs. He was threatening Abbotsford. The official community plan he put in effect. When I told him I was coming into forensic audit and deroyal the official community plan, Henry went to every avenue there was to pay the Abbotsford men and women off in uniform. We've seen too many things, too many sympathies. The Abbotsford Police beating people, telling an African-American kid up at Mill Lake he's not allowed in, or up at Yale because he's not allowed in the park after hours. We saw him race the Dodge Chargers. We saw him prick up the prostitute. We saw him smash my phone and smash my camera as a mayor and as a politician, make accusations that I was in Abbotsford disturbing the peace. They had enough witnesses to frame me. They failed to go to White Rock to get the multi-billionaire's phone number where I was working on his job site. They failed to do it all because the big company and the big black vehicles with the blue lights will save you. We have to go after these men. We have to go after them like there's none, never, ever. And we have to set examples. We have to make sure that Mike Surr is hauled back here and he's pressed before our Supreme Courts, because that will change the outfit of what an officer is supposed to do. They're supposed to know their position. They're supposed to call it out. They're supposed to face charges. They're running through Abbotsford wild, real wild and out of control. What took place on Councillor Mogel. To all South Asians, I apologize to you, but I will defend that South Asian and I will defend all South Asians because you have a right to Abbotsford. Remember, Henry was a foreigner when he came from Paraguay and landed here. We welcomed him in, and this is what he wanted to do, go in the city. Henry Brown got in that car and sent this off the rails, left the city of Abbotsford, came in his Lexus car and tried to end my life, fled from the scene, left me for dead. Abbotsford Police, the top of Abbotsford Police, investigators and corporals and investigators and task force covered it for him because he was their boss, their elite boss. He was setting up business plans. He needed to load Ross, so Mike Surr held him in position till he could load everything that Ross and Abbotsford could have. You could see Rom Funk's zoning, you could see the Cooper's Farm, you could see the Mackenzie Bog, you could see all the jobs. I'm running for mayor of Abbotsford. I will give you back your voice, I will give you back your city, and I will go after them jobs. From Mackenzie Bog to the Cacaro Ranch and Rom Funk. As your mayor, I will bring the best men and women that will represent you, that will take affidavits and take statements, and that is the RCMP. And that is what Abbotsford needs, because I am a free man, and I'm running for your mayorship to bring the RCMP in here. But Abbotsford men and women on the police force can't be trusted. They'll use Vicky Hopes for everything. They can't be out and doing any thinking crimes because they'll be taking bribes from people, they'll be framing people, they'll lie, and they'll cheat. It's a scummy, rotten, filthy business they were in, and it was being run by backroom players, the elite mob. It was the RCMP of Surrey knew when Henry had tried to kill me, dumped his Lexus car. They said, go to your MP. Your MP will go to Ottawa, head fast, and he'll get the RCMP in here. This is something we don't look away from. Chief Watts, let me make it clear to all your men that think they're untouchable. In the uniform, they're at the top, as the guys in the bottom said. It's nothing to do with us. Them guys at the top were doing it. You're going to be dragged and kicked the hardest. I want all law enforcement around the world, government leaders, and everybody to see from municipality to municipality. A little police department just outside of Abbotsford's town called Mission, BC, stood up to help Abbotsford residents on negligence of their homes and what the mayor, Henry Brown, was doing. Mr. Billionaire was setting his plan and investing his money, and he knew that he could control the Abbotsford Police and they weren't going to investigate him. And he knew he bought into an organized elite mob. We have to dismantle that mob so people like Councillor Mogill, people like Barty Sindhu, and everybody else has a vile chance in our democracy and is not prosecuted wrongly. To Ross Siemens, it ain't going to hold it down, Ross. We're going to go all the way as Abbotsford residents, and we're going to get forensic audits into every job, everything you've been moving, and everything you've been lifting. Henry Brown's son opened the door, and there's no going back. I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia, and I want to make this statement at the end of my video. We owe the Mission RCMP, men and women, a tremendous thanks as human beings to human beings. They did not once look away from these acts that were taking place on Councillor Mogill or on me when I was running in the election. They made sure that I played by all the rules. I didn't go to Henry's house and use muscle. They made sure that was to flush out the top of the Abbotsford Police. We cannot listen that the task force is important. The drug officers and undercover officers are important. What they did, they have to be gone and never see law enforcement again. I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia.